The scenario is certainly captivating. Imagine waking up tomorrow, reaching into your desk drawer, and discovering that a 25,000 Iraqi dinar note, a small memento you've held onto for years, is suddenly and inexplicably worth 85,750. This dramatic valuation represents an overnight financial miracle, the kind of story that immediately sparks a wildfire of excitement and speculation. It's a jaw-dropping fantasy, yet this very idea, this sudden, massive increase in value, is precisely the kind of buzz currently electrifying numerous corners of the internet, from obscure investment forums to mainstream social media platforms. The phrase RV is starting is now trending with a fervor fueled by claims that the long-anticipated revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, a rumored event spanning over a decade, has finally, definitively begun. This phenomenon captures the imagination because it speaks to the universal desire for a quick, life-altering windfall. But before anyone rushes to celebrate or make any rash financial moves based on this extraordinary claim, a measured and realistic approach is crucial. We must collectively pause and take a sober, critical look at the full landscape of information and misinformation surrounding this currency. When claims emerge suggesting that a small stack of paper bills could transform an ordinary person into a millionaire literally overnight, experience dictates that there's always a deeper, more complex narrative beneath the surface excitement. Today, our objective is to peel back the layers of hype, diving into the core facts, dissecting the persistent rumors, and ultimately confronting the economic reality that underpins this so-called stunning update about the dinar's valuation in 2025. By the time we conclude this deep dive, the importance of separating truth from speculation and understanding the economic principles behind currency movements will become demonstrably clear, proving far more valuable than the transient excitement generated by wishful thinking and unverified claims. To begin, it's essential to define the central term that drives all this chatter: RV. This abbreviation stands for revaluation, which is an official adjustment a sovereign nation makes to increase the fixed exchange rate of its currency relative to an anchor currency, most often the US dollar. In a purely theoretical context, proponents of the dinar's revaluation argue that if Iraq's governing financial bodies were to dramatically and suddenly raise the dinar's value, that 25,000 dinar note could, in an instant, soar to the kind of worth being discussed in these online groups. The core issue, however, and the question that demands an objective answer, is whether there is any verifiable evidence indicating that such a massive revaluation is genuinely underway right now at this moment in October 2025. This question must be grounded in the observable economic data provided by official institutions. As of the current date in October 2025, the official and verifiable exchange rate, as publicly set and maintained by the Central Bank of Iraq (CB), stands at an approximate value where $1 is roughly equivalent to 1,310 Iraqi dinar. Translating this official rate back to the speculative value, a 25,000 dinar note, when converted using the current, legitimate exchange metrics, is worth approximately 19. This established figure is significantly, perhaps impossibly, distant from the tens of thousands of dollars often cited in sensational online posts. This stark discrepancy forces a critical examination: where exactly do these astronomically high, multi-thousand-dollar valuation numbers originate? They stem from speculative claims that Iraq has a secret plan to raise the dinar's value to an arbitrary benchmark of more than $3 per dinar, a hyperbolic, massive jump that, if it were to occur, would effectively rewrite and potentially destabilize Iraq's entire economic structure overnight. Such a dramatic, overnight currency leap simply does not happen without equally powerful, verifiable, and monumental economic forces driving it, typically involving a total restructuring of a nation's economy, which must also be accepted by the global financial community. This leads to the logical inquiry: why has the volume of conversation around this topic surged so intensely and so suddenly? The recent escalation in buzz is largely attributed to online communities, currency speculators, and informal dealers who are actively disseminating posts claiming that Iraq is on the brink of an imminent, secret, or surprise RV. These narratives consistently allege that high-level, clandestine meetings and major financial adjustments are already in motion behind the scenes in Baghdad. The typical narrative structure of these posts relies heavily on unverified, persuasive, sounding language, often beginning with phrases designed to convey exclusivity and insider knowledge, such as "inside sources say," or "my contact in Baghdad confirmed that the RV is live." For individuals who have emotionally and financially invested in this outcome for many years, these repeated claims resonate deeply, sounding like the realization of a long-held dream. However, the sobering truth, which requires acknowledging the history of this speculation, is that this identical rumor cycle has been a recurring feature of the currency trading world for more than a full decade. The exact same claims appeared with equal intensity and predictive certainty in 2009, then again in 2015, and once more around 2020, each time predicting a massive, imminent change next week or next month. Despite the recurring waves of excitement and certainty generated by these claims, not a single one of these predicted, massive revaluations has ever materialized. It is vital to underscore that this persistent failure of prediction does not, by any means, imply that Iraq's currency is incapable of growing stronger over time. Economic progress is always possible. What it strongly suggests, however, is that the fantasy of an overnight, thousands of percent transformation in the value of a single note is a financial event that is vastly less probable than what many eager participants in online communities fervently believe or hope for. A realistic examination requires shifting focus from these rumors to the actual, tangible economic context of Iraq. Iraq's national economy presents a complex picture, one that is fundamentally and heavily reliant on the exportation of oil, which consistently accounts for a staggering figure of nearly 90% of the entire government's revenue stream. This dependence is a double-edged sword, a substantial blessing when global oil prices are high, which allows Iraq to earn more foreign currency, significantly strengthen its national reserves, and consequently help stabilize the dinar's exchange rate. Conversely, it becomes an immense challenge when global oil prices experience a significant downturn, causing the exact opposite financial effects. Over the past year, verifiable market data indicates that global oil prices have maintained a relatively stable trend, and Iraq has also demonstrated a measurable increase in its overall oil production capacity. While these developments are objectively positive indicators for the stability and gradual growth potential of the Iraqi economy, they are fundamentally insufficient, by themselves, to justify or facilitate a sudden multi-dollar per dinar jump. Genuine and sustainable economic growth is an inherently slow process, a gradual development that is influenced and shaped by a complex interplay of numerous, interconnected factors. These factors include, but are not limited to, the consistent stability of the country's political governance, the favorable nature of its trade balance with international partners, the active management of national inflation rates, and the consistent attraction of significant, long-term foreign direct investment. In line with this gradual, long-term approach, the Central Bank of Iraq, CBI, has been engaged for many years in methodical, sustained work aimed at effectively controlling domestic inflation and fundamentally modernizing and improving the country's antiquated banking infrastructure. While these necessary actions demonstrate a responsible approach to economic management and are vital for future financial health, there is absolutely no indication within these policy moves that a dramatic, sudden, and complete revaluation of the currency is imminent or even being actively planned in the near term. Therefore, understanding the genuine requirements for a real revaluation becomes crucial for perspective. In the simplest economic terms, a sovereign nation is unable to simply will or declare its currency to be dramatically more valuable without the backing of real, measurable economic might. The true, inherent value of any nation's currency is a direct and transparent reflection of its comprehensive economic strength, the volume and competitiveness of its exports, the total productivity of its national output, and most critically, the level of trust and confidence it commands from sophisticated international financial markets. If, hypothetically, the Iraqi government were to unilaterally announce that one dinar is suddenly equal to $3, the global financial architecture would be faced with an unprecedented and difficult decision. It would have to immediately accept this rate, and in a corresponding necessity, other nations would be compelled to purchase Iraqi goods, including its crucial oil exports, at this dramatically increased, much higher price point. Such an enormous leap in currency valuation, as financial experts consistently caution, would have a devastating and counterproductive effect on the very foundation of Iraq's economy. A dinar valued at $3 or more would instantaneously render Iraq's exports, especially its lifeblood, oil, far too expensive and thus uncompetitive for the vast majority of foreign buyers on the global market. This scenario, contrary to the hopes of speculators, would not save Iraq's economy. It would trigger a massive collapse in export demand, immediately shrinking the nation's trade balance and potentially causing a severe economic contraction. This is precisely why the overwhelming consensus among professional economists is that if the dinar ever does rise in value, it will be a deliberate, carefully managed, and gradual process, unfolding over a long period, rather than a disruptive, overnight shock. This brings us to the crucial question at the heart of the current online excitement. Is there any concrete, demonstrable evidence that a revaluation process might be genuinely starting soon, even a gradual one? Proponents often point to Iraq's sustained, recent efforts to significantly modernize its entire national banking system as a key preparatory sign. Indeed, the Central Bank of Iraq has been consistently working to implement tighter regulatory controls, enhance internal currency management protocols, and significantly upgrade its digital transaction capabilities and infrastructure. These extensive changes are undeniably designed with a clear goal: to make Iraq's overall financial system more transparent, more robust, and structurally stable, all of which are absolutely necessary prerequisites for any long-term economic strength. It is vital, however, to correctly interpret the meaning of these reforms. These necessary adjustments, while positive, are not proof of an impending, massive, overnight revaluation event. Instead, they serve as tangible, observable indicators that Iraq is diligently and slowly establishing the foundational groundwork required for sustainable, long-term stability and future growth. For those who maintain a genuine belief in the long-term economic prospects of Iraq, this steady, methodical progress is inherently good news, signifying responsible governance. Nevertheless, it is clearly not the explosive change or secret RV that is relentlessly promoted within the speculative, rumor-based online communities, which thrive on the idea of rapid, extraordinary wealth creation. Over the preceding few months, a number of social media posts, deliberately constructed to appear authoritative, have circulated widely, making the sensational claim that major, recognizable banks in the United States and across Europe are actively preparing to exchange Iraqi dinar at these newly rumored, dramatically inflated rates. These posts frequently incorporate screenshots or photographs, often doctored or presented without context, that are designed to appear official and lend credibility to the claims, yet they consistently and conspicuously fail to provide any form of verifiable, independent source or official bank announcement. When independent researchers carefully investigate these claims, the accompanying images are routinely found to be either digitally altered, misleadingly cropped, or entirely taken out of their original context, serving only to generate excitement and an illusion of imminent change. It is an established financial fact that major global banks operate under the stringent guidelines of international exchange rate systems and regulatory bodies, and none of these respected institutions have announced or confirmed any change whatsoever in the established, official dinar value. The definitive test for the veracity of this rumor is simple: if a revaluation event of this purported magnitude were genuinely taking place, it would not be confined to cryptic hints in chat rooms and unverified Facebook groups. Such an economic shift would instantly become the top news story, commanding complete and immediate coverage across every major financial network on the planet, accompanied by official press releases, necessary international agreements, and tangible, widespread market adjustments. Despite the absence of official confirmation, many individuals continue to hold out hope for a significant, sudden change, a sentiment that is, at an emotional level, entirely understandable. Iraq has, without a doubt, achieved genuine and measurable progress since the turbulent period of the early 2000s. The nation has been actively involved in rebuilding and revitalizing key industrial sectors, successfully attracting new international investors, and implementing significant infrastructure improvements in critical urban centers such as Baghdad, Basra, and Erbil. Furthermore, the government is making tangible efforts to combat entrenched corruption and systematically create new, sustainable job opportunities, all of which are vital steps that could eventually lead to stronger, longer-term economic growth. However, it is imperative to distinguish between the promise of a stabilizing economy and the speculative expectation of a sudden, explosive currency event. What experienced financial analysts overwhelmingly project for Iraq is a slow, methodical, and steady appreciation of the dinar's value, occurring naturally as the country consistently strengthens its international trade relationships and its internal political stability. This anticipated trajectory is best characterized as a marathon, a long and deliberate effort, not a sudden, unpredictable sprint. The fundamental principle remains that true, enduring wealth is generated and compounded gradually over time through sound economic fundamentals, not instantaneously overnight through miraculous currency shifts. To truly understand the persistence and resilience of these recurring rumors, one must examine the psychological landscape that sustains them. The human mind is inherently and powerfully drawn to narratives of sudden hope and the tantalizing prospect of effortless, massive opportunity. The idea that a relatively small, speculative investment could suddenly transform into a colossal fortune is a deeply appealing concept. For a segment of the dinar holders, the act of holding the currency transcends a mere financial transaction. It is an emotional investment, a profound symbol of their belief in a powerful and inspiring comeback story for a nation that has endured decades of conflict. While this underlying hope is undeniably an inspiring element, it simultaneously renders people highly vulnerable to manipulative misinformation and repeated cycles of hype. It is a well-established pattern that many individuals involved in the selling of dinar actively profit from these predictable cycles of speculative excitement. They frequently market and sell the currency at inflated, marked-up prices, creating a false sense of urgency and enthusiastically encouraging prospective buyers to act fast before the rumored RV hits, and the price becomes inaccessible. The unfortunate reality for many buyers is that once the initial excitement and feverish anticipation subside and the promised revaluation, as always, fails to materialize, they are left holding a low liquidity asset. The cycle then reliably begins anew, with the same rumors resurfacing months later, a pattern that enriches the sellers but disappoints the long-term holders. Shifting our focus to verified, factual activities inside Iraq in 2025, the government has officially announced and begun implementing a variety of concrete economic reform plans specifically designed to reduce the nation's over-reliance on oil revenues by strategically diversifying its income sources. Beyond its primary dependence on oil, Iraq is dedicating resources and investment towards developing and strengthening sectors like agriculture, sophisticated technology, and manufacturing. These multifaceted steps are widely considered to be absolutely critical for achieving true, long-term economic resilience and sustainability. Concurrently, Iraq has been actively collaborating with influential international financial institutions, including the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, with the clear objective of strengthening and aligning its internal fiscal policies with global standards. The Central Bank of Iraq continues to responsibly maintain a steady and substantial level of foreign currency reserves, acting as a crucial buffer, and is actively implementing and enforcing significantly stronger anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing regulations to enhance transparency and security. Collectively, these actions are building a measurably healthier and more secure environment that is conducive to gradual and sustained currency growth over an extended time frame. However, the conclusive observation remains unchanged. There is a complete absence of any verifiable or official signal indicating an impending overnight, dramatic revaluation of the dinar. The lack of evidence for the RV must be contrasted with the long-term potential many investors see. Certain long-term investors correctly point to Iraq's truly massive and proven oil reserves, combined with its increasingly improving regional trade relationships, arguing that these foundational elements could, over an extended period, eventually facilitate a significantly stronger dinar. And, on a purely economic basis, this long-term perspective is not inherently incorrect. As Iraq achieves greater political stability, and its economy continues its methodical consolidation and growth, Its currency is structurally positioned to gradually gain value. Yet, this type of sustained, fundamental growth typically requires the passage of decades, not a fleeting few days or weeks. One need only look at the historical economic trajectories of nations like South Korea or Vietnam, whose currencies slowly and steadily appreciated in direct correlation with the robust growth of their export economies and the forging of vital global partnerships to see a likely model for Iraq's path. The key point of distinction is that a sudden, non-organic leap from a value less than $1 penny to an arbitrary value exceeding $3 per dinar would constitute an economic event without genuine precedent in the modern history of global currency management. It is a fantastical scenario that defies the established, observable laws of supply, demand, and international trade equilibrium. Furthermore, it is essential to clearly and unequivocally address a pervasive and significant misconception: the frequent conflation of redenomination with revaluation. These are two fundamentally different financial actions with vastly different implications for personal wealth. A redenomination is a purely technical and often cosmetic adjustment wherein a country modifies the physical presentation or the numerical denomination of its currency, most commonly by systematically removing several zeros from the notes to simplify everyday transactions. For instance, replacing a 1,000 dinar note with one new dinar note, crucially without altering the underlying total international value. News reports have sometimes mentioned Iraq's ongoing discussion of a redenomination plan, but this action does not, in itself, make the currency instantly or intrinsically more valuable on the global stage. It is merely a technical or clerical adjustment aimed at achieving greater accounting efficiency and convenience, an action taken by numerous nations for ease of use, not for creating profit for currency speculators. An important and necessary warning must be issued to anyone contemplating or actively considering the purchase of more dinar based on these persistent rumors. Extreme caution is warranted. Numerous online sellers and speculative groups aggressively claim they can procure authentic, uncirculated notes and routinely promise that a buyer's investment will inevitably multiply many times over the instant the RV supposedly occurs. Some even go so far as to suggest that banks are mysteriously refusing to sell dinar because they have secret knowledge of the impending revaluation. The harsh financial reality, however, is that speculating on exotic currency, especially one with such low liquidity, is one of the most significant and highest risk forms of investing available. Factors such as exorbitant exchange fees, the lack of a reliable, deep market for resale, and notoriously low liquidity mean that most individuals who buy dinar will face considerable, often insurmountable, difficulty attempting to convert their holdings back to US dollars later. Reputable financial advisors consistently recommend that any involvement with this type of speculation be treated as an extremely small, high-risk curiosity, and emphatically never as a core or major component of a person's overall investment strategy. Despite these clear warnings and the high risks, it remains undeniable that the underlying economic fundamentals of Iraq, its young and dynamic population, its advantageous geographic location, and its immense, untapped oil wealth, do hold the potential to foster genuine, long-term opportunities. Should the government maintain its commitment to structural reforms, successfully attract and retain international business partnerships, and further strengthen its governmental institutions, the dinar could indeed appreciate gradually in the coming years. Some market experts have ventured to predict modest, single-digit percentage gains as early as 2026 or 2027, provided that two critical conditions are met. Global oil demand must remain consistently strong, and internal political tensions must continue to ease. Crucially, these projected gains would be precisely that, measured in small, incremental percentage increases, a world away from the catastrophic thousands of percent increase dreamt of by speculators. The central and most important takeaway from a factual perspective is that Iraq's ongoing economic progress is genuinely unfolding, but it is following the path of a sustained, difficult climb, not an instantaneous vertical rocket launch. To fully illustrate the impracticality of the rumors, one must simply contemplate the catastrophic and immediate consequences if the dinar were to revalue overnight to a rate exceeding $3 per unit. Iraq's entire national money supply would instantly be valued at trillions of dollars, a figure exponentially greater than its current actual economic output or the total capacity of its foreign reserves could possibly sustain or back up, the Central Bank of Iraq would instantaneously face unsustainable pressure to manage this artificial valuation. The country's vital exports would suffer a sudden, crippling collapse, and the government would likely find itself unable to service its existing debts effectively. Domestic inflation could spin violently out of control, and its entire foreign trade system could freeze overnight. This hypothetical scenario, far from being beneficial, would inflict enormous economic damage upon Iraq, which is precisely why the vast majority of sober economists outright reject the notion as entirely counterproductive and financially illogical. The fundamental law of sustainable currency valuation is that a strong, productive economy is the necessary because that supports and drives a strong currency, not the other way around. Therefore, where does this factual analysis leave both the long-term holders and everyday individuals who may currently hold Iraqi dinar notes? The only rational and responsible course of action is one of patience, diligent awareness, and unshakable realism. If a holder's investment is predicated on a sincere, long-term belief in Iraq's eventual future stability and prosperity, there is no financial harm in retaining a small quantity of notes as a speculative keepsake or a purely long-term hope. However, it is absolutely essential to maintain a clear, decisive separation between that emotional hope and the corrosive influence of unverified hype. Holders must deliberately choose to rely on verifiable, official updates released by the Central Bank of Iraq, CBI, and the reports from established, credible international financial news outlets, not the anonymous claims circulating in private, speculative chat groups. The true, factual signals that will determine genuine currency movement, oil production volumes, government stability trends, and national inflation rates are the metrics that truly matter and should be tracked. It must be remembered that genuinely significant, nation-altering financial changes are always, by their very nature, public and internationally sanctioned events, never secret operations confined to the shadows. Looking ahead, 2025 will likely continue to be a crucially important year for the broader Iraqi economy, marked by continuing stabilization efforts, intensive rebuilding programs, and a concerted push to attract sustained foreign direct investment. The persistent global energy demand continues to provide Iraq with a degree of critical economic leverage, and the ongoing investment in infrastructure projects promises to streamline and facilitate smoother regional and international trade. All of these converging factors undeniably point toward a future of slow, yet measurable, positive economic progress. The dinar will almost certainly strengthen slightly as a direct and honest reflection of these very real, tangible developments, but the highly publicized dream of somehow converting a 25,000 dinar note into an astronomical 85,750 remains, for the foreseeable future, nothing more than a powerful fantasy. To operate on the assumption that this fantasy is reality is to risk both one's capital and one's peace of mind. Therefore, in conclusion, the definitive question is the long-rumored RV starting right now? The factual answer, based on all available evidence and economic reality, is a categorical no. There is no official confirmation, no sudden, dramatic change in the official rate, and no credible, verifiable evidence of a secret currency adjustment occurring behind the global financial curtain. The Iraqi dinar remains at a stable exchange rate, holding a value that is essentially unchanged from the preceding year, and the nation continues its methodical, gradual process of recovery and structural reform. But the truly positive and important message here is that real constructive progress is indeed happening. It is just not manifesting in the form of the instant, overnight financial miracle that many continue to imagine and hope for. By making a conscious effort to stay fully informed, consistently applying critical thinking to all claims, and making all financial decisions strictly based on verifiable facts rather than on fear or fantasy, individuals can effectively protect their financial interests and future security. The story of the Iraqi dinar's journey is far from over, and we will continue to meticulously track every development that carries genuine economic weight.